I'm the only person you'll see. Okay, so my mission, who am I? I'm Francesca Murray, and I go by the title, the Inner Work Alchemist. And the reason being, it's because of the depth of inner work that I've been doing for the last 9 years on myself. And because I am an alchemist, which through channeling all of the wisdom that I'm going to be sharing today and throughout all of my courses, actually, is a manifestation of channeling that which came out through meditation. It came out of the cosmos, into the crown chakra, came through my body, and I produced it in a form where people can learn, right? And so I call it, I say, it came out of the cosmos, and I helped anchor it here into this 3D third dimension which we're living in. My mission is I'm teaching humanity how to exit their cycles of karmic suffering by entering the path of wholeness so that they can experience and express their divinity. My vision is, and the reason being is because my vision is to evolve the way humanity is being served into higher levels of service that nourishes our evolutionary growth. And the reason for that is for higher conscious expression and experience. And when we dive into the ego and the pain body in our programming today, you get the opportunity to understand with great clarity why this is my vision. Of course, my legacy is to leave a world that's designed to serve humanity better. And I plan to teach organizations and government, anybody that is willing to learn, how they too can help to nourish like their employees' evolutionary growth for highest conscious expression experiences through diversity, empowerment, and an environmental initiative. I will talk a little bit about that because we're going to talk about mindfulness and how it actually contributes to, how it will contribute and how it contributes to a better environment, to saving our environment. So change, my favorite topic, because this is what happens when we began doing the inner work journey from our heads to our hearts. Change. There's a quote by Gandhi, and it's my favorite quote from the movie, actually. He was having a conversation with one of the leaders, and he said, do we fight to change things, or do we fight to punish? When you look around at the world around us, you'll see that all we've been doing is fighting to punish. We have wars. There's currently wars happening, and sadly, because of the ignorance of the ego mind, we cannot see that that is an issue, that is not how we're going to experience the change that we wish to see, right? So Gandhi said to his leaders, the people in charge that were telling him, we should fight, we need to show them power, is that he said, because since we're all just sinners, we should leave punishment to God, right? Because as human beings, it is not up to us to punish people. And as you know, Buckminster Fuller, my favorite quote is, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different result is just simply stupidity, right? Sadly, our entire mental health and every single part of our system pretty much is built to do the same thing over and over again. And so, many of us, we fight for change, we fight for a good cause, but we don't realize that because the system itself is broken, those causes, they don't necessarily manifest based on our noblest of intentions. So how are we going to change? I'm suggesting that we ignite change by applying mindfulness through wisdom, compassion, and skillful means. And we're going to dive into wisdom, compassion, and skillful means because those are the tools. That is the tool that the Christ used, that Gandhi used, that Martin Luther King used. Every single being or divine being that have walked the earth have used wisdom, compassion. So mindfulness, which is the wisdom, compassion, and skillful means in order to solve a problem, to solve any problem. So even in the workplace, if you're having issues, we're going to be diving deeply when we dive into the pain body and the ego mind. We're going to be diving into the application of wisdom, compassion, and skillful means. So mindful change, those, I give a few examples here because, well, I couldn't help it. This has become a pet peeve of mine. I said those who, protested, for example, and this is a great example of ignorance of our ego mind when we're flowing from the egoic state of mind. So we're flowing from up here. We don't recognize that we're actually in the mind and not from our higher conscious self, even though our intention is noble. For example, the people who fought for the reduction of uses, in plastic, they had a noble, compassionate heart. It was like, oh my goodness, I want to save the environment. I'm doing something to save the environment. However, sadly, it lacked skillful means. There were poor skillful means. And now we're actually destroying even more trees because the paper products aren't working, right? I go to the grocery store, and I'm sure many of you, when you go to the store, you could see that the paper products aren't working. The bags fall apart, right? We need multiple bags. And now we've got to print even more paper, create even more paper products for everything, right? So it does not work. So that's an example of poor skillful means. We need more straws and so forth, right? So how often do we witness people around the world fighting for change, thinking that they need to fight for freedom or start a war against something? Right? There's so many war against violence, the word war is highly overused because there's war against everything. Fights that have led to war itself, violence, hunger, greed for power and control, judgment, hatred, even raping of women and children. Okay, and Martin Luther King says, as we all know, violence begets violence, right? Because when we start to understand the power of the 3, 6, and 9, which is energy, frequency, and vibration, and in today's program, I'm hoping you would have a good grasp and understanding of vibration and what it is, because it is our vibration that manifests, right? So violence begets violence. That's exactly what that means. When you are running that vibratory field, you have that vibration of violence and anger within you, and you're going out with that, excitement of, oh my goodness, I'm going to make a change, because, that's what the mind is saying, I'm going to do this and it's going to change the world, and whatever it is that your mind is feeding you, right? And I'm going to do so by starting a war, I'm going to shoot that country down, or whatever it is that you want to start. Your vibration of that anger is what manifests, sometimes no matter what your mind says, right? So you could have a noble intention, compassionate heart, but if you have poor skillful means, what you're going to manifest is what Buckminster Fuller said, right? The same thing over and over again. And so you're going to get the same results. So, at one point, Gandhi looked at his leader and said, who were insisting he needed to show power and fight. He said that, using force, he said to him, here you are falling into their assimilation and becoming like them. So today, you're going to learn about energy, frequency, and vibration, and the fact that what you attune to is what you become. What you think is what you become. What you feel, most importantly, is what you become, because your feeling is your vibration. And I always, refer to that like as hungry ghosts feeding on hatred, anger, judgment, jealousy, and greed, right? Because it has an insatiable appetite, right? So I'm here to show you that sadly we have pre-programmed our subconscious pain body to feed on these energies unconsciously, without knowing and without realizing that that's what we're doing, and that's what's been happening. So I said here, this is a little bit about me creating a legacy one heart at a time. So a little background about me. 9 years ago, I started this journey from a homeless shelter for women and children. I literally felt I needed to save my daughter from becoming like me, from becoming an imprint of her dad, from becoming like my other kids. Like I felt I needed to save her, and the only way I thought of doing that was to leave everything behind. Literally, I left it all, the car, the whole 9 yards. I left it all behind, and I moved into a homeless shelter for women and children. And I remember when I was in the homeless shelter and my consciousness started to awaken. It was an indigenous shelter, and this beautiful idea, my first channeling, my first big channeling, where I didn't know it was a channeling. That's what I was, receiving. All I knew is that the universe was saying, you need to create a free program for men. You need to create a program for men to help them and teach this program for free. You need to create a healing center for men. And that was based on my analysis from being in the group therapies, and they were telling us stuff like, oh my goodness, here is what's happening. This is the role that the men play. However, you can't say anything to them. And I remember as an analyst, I was sitting there thinking, well, if we don't say anything, how are they going to know? How are they going to become aware that these behaviors are out of alignment and so forth, right? So, being me, without thinking, I said, we need to teach them. We need to teach them. We need to help them. And so when I went home or into my space that night, that was where Brothers in Arms Building Better Lives was actually born. And I remember when the idea was coming in, I was writing it down. And this is why I promote, journaling, right? I started writing it down because I didn't want to forget anything that I was thinking and that I was seeing and feeling. But I remember asking God, like, are you sure this is, because it felt, my body was shaking. I felt it throughout my entire body. And I asked God, and I'm like, are you sure? Like, this is my life's purpose? How will I ever forgive all the men that impacted me in my life? Where do I start? How can you show me how? Because I had no idea, how I was going to forgive the men who played the role in sexual abuse and the raping and all of the other things that happened to me during my childhood. And even when I was in the shelter, from my victim mentality, I call it the victim unconscious state of mind, I felt that men were responsible. They were the reason I was in a homeless shelter. So I blamed them. I couldn't see my own imprints. Like, I didn't even know that word existed back then. I couldn't see my own imprints, right? I couldn't see how I attracted these circumstances to myself. I couldn't see any of it. So I was in that victim mentality of blame. I was in suffering. And so, I want to, of course, and Brothers in Arms, it was born in 2017, successfully launched actually from the homeless shelter, without money, without anything. I created my company, launched it, and successfully launched a 4-day program for free for men. And they were beautiful, beautiful beings that showed up to volunteer to teach the men, because I didn't know how to teach at the time. I didn't even know I was going to be a teacher. And I'm sharing my story. It's because I'm hoping to inspire each and every one of you, because I want you to know that no matter where you're starting from, the egoic state of mind will always come up with stories to create doubt, right? And to make you, all of your pain body imprints will show up to make you feel like, oh my goodness, I can't do this. I remember I used to think, like, I had 50 questions. I used to think like, oh my goodness, I'm a woman. Which man is going to possibly show up at my workshop? I have no money. Which teacher is going to teach for free? I had all of these doubts, more limiting beliefs than you can possibly shake a stick at. I say I had to get excavator. There were excavator loads, is what I call it, of excavating that I needed to do in order to get out of my own way so that I can successfully launch Brothers in Arms, Building Better Lives. And today, not only is there Brothers in Arms Building Better Lives as the foundation, that in a way not just created my company, but it created me. On top of that, I now have the Science of Inner Work philosophy, which is my healing modality, right? And we're going to dive into purpose a little bit, if you guys remind me towards the end, because I know there are many people, I've seen it. On the Tony Robbins Mastermind site, you can go in and everybody is asking, how do I find my purpose? How do I know what I'm supposed to do, right? And for me, from where I'm at, I see it as something very easy to do. I see it so easily because I'm like, well, it's simple, just pick a benevolent cause in the world, pick something that serves humanity, that gives back, and make sure whatever you're picking, it's not attached to any monetary gain. And then just start working towards that. That is going to be your purpose, right? Or tied into your purpose in some way, shape, or form. But start something. Start by choosing a service that helps all of humanity, and go from there, right? So I want to inspire every human being on the planet to step forth into the wholeness of their higher conscious power and to embrace it, to trust it. These are all things that we no longer, majority of human beings no longer trust themselves. They don't trust their higher conscious self. They can't even identify it, right? And they're afraid of it when they do see it, because it shows them the truth and they're not ready to handle that truth. And so, based on where they're at in their journey and so forth, right? And so today's goal is to show you how to do that so that you're no longer afraid of the journey. Of course, majority of our subconscious programs were designed to perpetuate suffering, right? So how am I teaching humanity to do this? By reminding you of the path that leads to the end of suffering, which is eightfold. It's a combination of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And I know many people are going, oh my goodness, this is religion. No, Buddhism is not a religion. Nothing about this is actually religious. And that's a whole different topic. I'm not going to dive into that today because it's a very big topic and it's going to take away from what we're trying to do here. The right understanding, it's about developing the right understanding, which is the right view, the right mind, right? Because with that, it leads to pure awareness, right? With the right mind, you experience pure awareness and that wisdom, compassion, and skillful means. This is the same wisdom teaching. Believe it or not, the wisdom teaching from the Eightfold Path is the same teachings laid out in the Bhagavad Gita. It was demonstrated by every Buddha and Bodhisattva, and it was duplicated using different verbiage. So here is where it's going to crash all of that limiting belief, okay? It was duplicated using different verbiage by every single successful mastermind coach in the world, or a program, on when it comes to mind development, from Napoleon Hill to Bob Proctor, God rest his soul. Okay. And so is it religious when you look at it from that view? No, right? And so it is spiritual. To me, it's spiritual teachings, and that's the way I think about it. But it's the same teachings, if you're going to be successful, that you need to learn to master, you need to embody, that if you want to have a successful business, that you need to duplicate in order for your business to succeed. Okay, the Coast Salish people adapted some of these philosophies. They called it to be of good mind. The same thing, to be of good mind, the right view, right? Or the right mind. It's the same thing, just again, different words, right? Which represents how knowledge was passed down. And in its highest expression and transformation, it was represented by the Christ. And that's how I'm going to end today's presentation by sharing exactly how the Christ utilized this wisdom, compassion, and skillful means so that you can understand how you can utilize it too. So some of these wisdom teachings, of course, I've been unlocking through the inner work journey, my own inner work journey from my head to my heart, by integrating it. So I come in through meditation, I come into the wisdom understanding of, what it is that I'm asking the question. And then I integrate it. So when I understand it, I change everything about my life that I'm doing and I integrate it into my day-to-day life. And so I'm here to remind you and to show you that you can too. So let us dive in. The number one question that I get from clients and just random people all over the world is, Francesca, how can I tell the difference between my ego mind and my intuition? So to answer this question, I first need to teach you what the ego mind is, what the pain body is, and then what your intuition is. And so that's the heart of what we're going to be diving into today. Now, does anyone have any question? I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and ask if anybody have any questions yet. Okay, no? So let us dive in. I'm going to share my screen again because I'm guarantee you'll probably have questions. One of the things I do want to mention is that I'm going to be sharing a lot of information today, and it's probably going to be overwhelming for some of you. My rule of thumb is, and the reason why it will be possibly overwhelming for some of you is because that's based on where you're at in your journey. Everybody's at a different level of evolving in their journey, and I call it a different level of consciousness in their journey. And so my rule of thumb is take what you need and discard the rest. If you take what you need, make notes. If you don't understand it, sit with it. It's okay to ask the questions. My God, I have some of the biggest questions. I used to have some of the biggest questions you can possibly imagine, hundreds of them that I would ask the universe. So take what you need, discard the rest, meaning don't worry about the rest. Trust that whatever it is that you need today to help yourself heal, to help a loved one, to break a karmic cyclic existence, within your lineage and so forth, just trust that whatever you receive today is all that you need. So what exactly is the ego mind? So scientifically, of course, it's the frontal part of the brain, which comes into formation as we develop. I say until age 7. However, even though the formation continues after age 7, it starts to shift rapidly because now we're becoming more aware as children of the reality outside of ourselves, right? So it starts to change rapidly based on external stimulation and other factors, such as whether we're masculine or feminine, right? Because there's all kinds of hormones and so forth that triggers behavior and all of these things, right? Our ancestral and collective imprints, including the environment itself. So what we're listening to, where are we being, brought up? Like which country do we live in? What's the environment like and so forth? Like people who live in countries that have experienced war, how grateful are we that we're not in any of those countries, right? Can you imagine the imprint on those beautiful poor children that are growing up, right? They become adults and then they become that, right? Because what we program is what we become, and what we don't see and what no one tells us is as we're witnessing all of these things, where we actually, our egoic state of mind is collecting, it's programming this into what I call, what we'll understand is the pain body. It becomes our pain body, right? So through spiritual understanding, the ego mind stimulates through sensations which arises and fall away. Of course, when as a normal person going around in our day-to-day life, something triggers us, or we're moving through what I call hell, which is suffering, right? The mind doesn't show us that, oh my God, what we're experiencing is just an illusion and it's temporary. It's just a stimulation, and it's going to arise and literally fall away. We only understand that when we move into higher states of understanding through meditation, right? So illusions are basically the stories and ideas. I say that which is the egoic state of mind, it creates on its own based on its surrounding. So the ego creates these stories based on the surroundings, based on how it is experiencing what's happening, right? Based on what it thinks is happening without guidance. And I'm saying without guidance in quotes because who was taught that, oh my goodness, as my ego at age 7 or age 8, as my egoic state of mind, it's coming into formation, I'm supposed to guide it? Where's the school program that's teaching that? Who is teaching that? Nobody. I didn't learn that. At least I know in my generation anyways, there was no such thing. My God, we'd be lucky if we could use our voice freely, right? So nobody tells us that we're supposed to guide. We have the ability to guide this mind as it's coming into formation. Can you imagine what a beautiful world this would be if we all knew this, and every single child that was being raised from the moment of conception, so we were mindful conception, and we start to program them as we're raising them through through these higher states of consciousness, right? And we start to help guide them so that they can identify the difference between their egoic state of mind versus their intuition. They can identify when, oh my goodness, this rap song that I'm listening to, it's feeding my violent pain body because it's singing about violence, right? Versus, oh my God, maybe I should listen to a different song because the frequency, right, the rhythm itself of the song is a higher vibration. The words matter. The words that it speaks is actually feeding our divinity or higher conscious expression, not the unconscious pain body, not the victim consciousness mentality, and so forth. We're going to dive into that deeply, right? So the ego mind stimulates through senses, which arises and falls away, and are mainly illusions based. Illusions, the stories and ideas that it creates, right? And that it thinks is happening, or later on, it wants you to believe is happening so that it can stay in control, because when it's in control, it feels safe. There is no fear. What it doesn't tell you is that you're supposed to guide it. So I call ego stimulation attention demanding feelings, sensations, and thoughts that drives our behavior. On the Tibetan Tanka, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. And I'm going to show you, this is basically to demonstrate interconnection and interdependency, because we were conditioned to think separate from that dualistic mind, that split state of consciousness, right? And we don't, to the point, actually religiously, there are countries that are actually fighting religious wars because they actually believe, one person believes their religion is better than the other person, right? And they're missing the wisdom of the fact that everything is interconnected. Now, on the back of my wall, this is what we call a Tibetan tanka. This little, I'm going to stand for a moment, this little diagram here. And on this diagram, it's probably a little blurry, but on the very front, so there is a monk, okay? There is an elephant, and then there is a monkey. And the monkey is running in front of the elephant because it's like it's dancing and it's running because it's actually leading everything. It's running the show. This monkey represents the egoic state of mind. This is a Tibetan thinker. This is the same monkey referred to as Hanuman in Hinduism. That's just a small piece of the interconnection. Now, we're not going to get into that today. Today, it's more about helping you to understand the egoic state of mind, the subconscious mind, and the roles that it plays. It's helping you to understand why you are stuck in your cycle of suffering, and hopefully enough to help you understand how to raise your vibration and exit those cycles so that you can exit those cycles of suffering. You can dissolve those pain bodies. So this is the monkey. It represents the egoic state of mind. This is the elephant that's black, which represents a subconscious mind. So I should say this programmable part of our subconscious mind, right? When it's in its unconscious states. So all of the pain bodies, Eckhart Tolle refers to it as pain body. Pain body isn't my word, but I absolutely love it. And then the monk, he represents pure awareness, right? Because that's who, along the journey becomes the Buddha that rides the elephant when the elephant becomes white or illuminated with wisdom, right? And so does the monkey. And actually a monkey eventually sits down behind a monk and so forth. But that's a different part of my course. It's part of this same course. It's just going deep, diving really, really deep into the journey. And it's there to learn if somebody wants to learn it. So going back to that slide, the ego mind, like I said, on the Tibetan Tenka and in the Hindu culture, is represented as the monkey. It's a monkey mind because it's jumping around, right? I forgot to share my screen. Yeah, it's the busy mind. So it's always jumping around, like the monkey, it's running the show, right? So it's a state of mind which becomes triggered when you lose consciousness. When you lose consciousness, fear arises. Okay, so the ego, even though it's in control, it's scared. Isn't that interesting? However, the fear that arises, of course, is the ego's fear of losing control because it doesn't want to lose control. We become unconscious when we're unaware and we're uncertain. So when it's unaware, uncertain about what is going on, it becomes unconscious. And so right away, it starts to create a story of what it wants you to think or what it thinks is happening, because that story gives it comfort. Like, you feel better, you're in control, you're not in danger, right? And unawareness is the cause of delusion and suffering, right? Which is represented by the black elephant on the Tenka that I just showed you. And this fear, when it becomes triggered, it results in clinging to self or clinging to others as enemies. So you can cling to yourself, you can become depressed, you can give yourself a label called introvert or whatever it is, all of these things, you cling to yourself, right? And sadly, some people cling to themselves so much in that fear and become so depressed because of, the underlying pain body and so forth, which feeds the story. And we're going to talk about that connection between the ego and the subconscious mind and how those two actually work together. Profoundly. It's actually genius how well they orchestrate everything to control your reality if you allow it to, right? So it results in clinging to self, and some people become so depressed they actually commit suicide. I used to be one of those people a few decades ago. I tried to commit suicide myself a couple of times, because I was in my own pain body, right? And so, or you cling to others as enemies, like the war that we have that's happening right now in Russia and the Ukraine, right? So this is a great example of a fear that results in clinging to self or to others as enemies. It's that person's fault, has nothing to do, has nothing to do with me or any of my fucked up imprints, pardon me for lack of a better word, that I'm carrying, nothing to do with my pain body. It's that person's fault. I'm angry, because somebody is driving and cut me off in traffic, not because I'm carrying that imprint of anger that was already there, and I might be having a bad day. I'm out of balance. I'm out of harmony. And so I react, right? No, it's not my fault. It's the other driver's fault. Pardon my sarcasm, but you get to see how, the role very clearly that the mind plays, and why the monkey is so far ahead of the elephant on the tanka, right? In fact, it's not until the seventh veil that it actually sits down behind the mountain. And at the first, second, third, it's the third veil that it starts to get a little closer. And by the fourth veil, it's like really close. So when this fear arises, because the ego is on its own, does not know how to think or feel, we must guide it with understanding from our higher conscious awareness. And we're going to talk about awareness. How do we experience, how do we get into that state of awareness later on in the slides? So what's the ego's fear? It is humans' nature when we experience the great reality, or what we call darkness, that it triggers our pain body emotions and its cycle of suffering. And our lives start to evolve around it as you get pulled into its black hole. You, or we, begin to disappear because it sucks you in. And in part of the course that I teach, I talk about the seven, and I referenced it here too, the seven laws of the universe. One of those laws is the laws of karma, right? As above, so below. As within, so without, right? So as above, so below. The black hole, in the sky or wherever the black hole is, that's the same black hole we have within us. That's the same black hole that we get pulled into when we become consumed by our suffering, right? So as we approach this darkness, it feels like imminent danger. So to the ego, it feels like imminent danger. And this in itself can be terrifying to the ego's structure, which can eventually lead to deep thoughts of despair, suicide, depression, and hopelessness. So I'm going to pause for a moment because I know that is a lot. And I'm learning to pause in my workshops. And I'd like to ask here, does anyone have any questions so far? Or should I keep going?
Keep going. I'm going to refresh my water and I'll be right back.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead, refresh your water, take a minute, take a breather, because that's a lot to digest for some of you. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment as well. That's a small introduction of well, getting into as we get closer to diving deeper into the egoic state of mind. And we will continue. I will share my screen again so that we can continue. I encourage you, if you have any questions, write it down in your journal. You can ask at the end of our presentation. So this brings us to the second part of what I wanted to share today is about the pain body. So what exactly is the pain body? So the black elephant on the Tibetan Thangka, when it's black, or in Hinduism, they pray to Ganesh, which is, that when the evolved subconscious mind, right? Same thing, an elephant, right? So as we dive deeper into our inner selves, it is important to contemplate the role of our pain bodies in the shaping of our subconscious mind. So pain body is how and where entities reside to energetically feed. Because I know a lot of people ask about entities, like, do I have an entity attached to me? How do I know if I have an entity? Majority of people, if they have entities, they're not even aware that they have entities. And these are just energies that feed. Like attracts like. So these are energies that just feed on like energy. What we don't see is that when every time an entity attaches to you, guess what's happening? Think about it. Your vibratory field, it becomes plugged with all of these attachments, and it brings you down. It weighs you down. So when you're in that state of fear, right, and you're consumed by it, and you're experiencing depression and so forth, and you can't get out of it, this is likely why. It's because your thoughts that you're experiencing is feeding that lower vibration. It's feeding. Those entities are now generating those thoughts. In many cases, they're in charge, right? So it's generating thoughts and feelings that's causing you to stay in that state of fear, uncertainty, in that darkness, in that black hole. It's magnetically keeping you attuned to your lower vibratory states of consciousness, or in that case, it's unconsciousness, right? So the pain body is how and where the entities reside to energetically feed. Like attracts like. And in domestic abuse is a great example of how, entities actually feed. So our pain body is also known as the programmable part of our subconscious mind. It's formed by the external influences of our childhood and life experiences. So basically our upbringing, right? From the moment we're born, actually even before we're born, when we're in the womb, because the baby can hear everything. The baby can understand sounds and vibration and so forth, right? I usually make a funny, an awful joke at this point, because I always say, oh my God, I pray to God. I know my parents weren't, because I asked them, I'm like, but can you imagine the poor child, the pain body that child is receiving if the parents are having makeup sex and that person became pregnant? My God, right? All that energy gets released, and that's what, creates that child. And so that's a great example of a foundation of the pain body. It starts from the moment we start to form, inside of the womb, right? And so it's based on, external influences of our childhood and life experiences, such as our schools, the school that we go to, which is actually horrible right now in BC. Television, what do we watch on TV? What type of content do we consume, right? Is it violent films, and content, right? Because if that's the case, we're eating somebody else's pain body, aren't we? right? Our environment and societal, expectations, right? So we're like, here we are, we have this pain body, and you'll get to see this pain body more and more as we go through the presentation, right? So the subconscious mind plays a dualistic role. It's responsible for facilitating the daily intuitive functioning of our body so that when we go to sleep, we don't forget to breathe, or when we're having, a disease. I'm just going to let Ingrid in. Welcome, Ingrid. When we have a disease, for example, right? The body fights, right, the best that it can to fight off that disease, right? So the subconscious plays a beautiful role, right? At the same time, the programmable part is, that's why I refer to it as the programmable part of our subconscious mind. It, collects everything. It remembers, you read a book, who you read, what you're reading, it's taking root in that subconscious mind. It becomes a program, right? You watch a TV show, it becomes a program, right? So these, so it runs the programs and cycles that have been programmed into our existence since beginningless time in relation to our thoughts, feelings, and actions. So when you're thinking of a subconscious mind, think of our thoughts, because our thoughts creates our feelings, and our feelings is what determines how we're showing up in the world, what actions we're going to take, right? PB, pain body, that's a short version of writing it, right? So the pain body is the source of the emotions and feelings that we cannot control, such as anger, depression, anxiety, and even suicidal thoughts. Have you ever wondered why, no matter how hard you try, you still find yourself being triggered by external factors such as societal issues or financial hardship, and even the food industry? You eat food and it, damages your physical body, right? If it's the wrong food. So these are all examples of pain body triggers. That's what I call them, pain body triggers that are programmed. It's already programmed into our subconscious mind based on our personal and collective experiences. The pain body, it is important to understand that these pain body structures are cyclical and orchestrated by our egoic state of mind. So it's orchestrated by the ego. So the subconscious mind orchestrated by the ego, which have been programmed by limiting beliefs and views, because it's programmed by what the ego thinks is happening. It's programmed by television, through television and books, based on what people are telling you is happening, right? And so there is that relationship between the subconscious mind and the ego and how they play together profoundly, actually, right? Because the ego also self-programs, nobody tells us this, and organizes the delivery of its imprints based on our pain body structures in relation to how it experiences the world around us. Sit with that. The ego self-programs and organizes delivery of its imprints, so its stories, actions, whatever the case may be, based on our pain body structures in relation to how it experiences the world around us. These limiting beliefs are unconscious programs of thoughts and feelings that leads us to take actions that do not serve our highest conscious expression or experiences. Because when we're angry at somebody, we become triggered and we're like yelling at them. That's not our higher conscious expression now, is it? And what happens to us after we've yelled at somebody? We're consumed by guilt. Oh my God, I just did that. I just screwed up, right? We beat ourselves up. We don't feel good about it. Even though at the time when we're yelling, it might feel good to the ego mind and to the pain body. When we're done, in the end, we're the ones that suffer. Right? Because what we don't see is that we've now fed that energetic vibration of anger and guilt and shame and everything that we're going to feel afterwards within us. And what we feed becomes stronger. What we feed, what we unconsciously feed becomes stronger. And then we go about our lives and we're thinking, oh my goodness, here I am. All these bad things are happening to me. Why am I attracting another person that's doing something to me? Why am I attracting this relationship that isn't working? What we don't see, what the ego mind doesn't tell us and it won't tell us, is that we're attracting these things to us because we are carrying that energetic vibration. We're carrying the same imprint. As within, so without. So it is important to remember that primal emotions such as anger, sadness, happiness, fear, and trust are natural programs that we were gifted in this human form. So in this physical body, in this human form, we were gifted those natural emotions. However, we weren't taught how to develop it the right way. Okay, we weren't taught how to program them in a way that serves our highest good. I mean, there is a lot of information out there. I shouldn't say we weren't taught. It just wasn't, I guess, a priority because of, all the violence and everything else that we were attuned to, that we've become attuned to, our victim mentality and so forth, the things that stimulates us, because that's our vibration, right? But there's lots of books, lots of religions, lots of teachings out there by many people. As a child, I know on television, I don't have a television now, but as a child on TV, one of my favorite show was actually Temple Kung Fu, The Legend, right? And I always loved it because I always felt inspired to be, I've always wanted to be a monk since I was a child. I don't know why, but yeah. So there is a lot out there. We've just become so lost, we forgot, So by diving deep into our inner selves and contemplating the role of our pain bodies in the shaping of our subconscious mind, we can begin to unravel the limiting beliefs and reprogram ourselves for a more fulfilling and conscious existence. So our intuition. So now that you've understand, you have an idea and an overview of what the egoic state of mind is and the role that it plays. And then an understanding and overview of the pain body and the role that it plays and how these two dance, interconnect together beautifully, actually. What about the intuition? What is our intuition? Well, to me, if I think about my intuition, I think of God, I think of the higher conscious self, I think of that which doesn't, the part of it that doesn't have a body. There is no mind, no body, no eyes, no ears, no nose, and so forth, right? When I try to think about it logically to bring it forth to the world, intuition to me is our state of pure awareness. It is presence and understanding. And it plays the most critical role in our lives. And sadly, we have conditioned ourselves to ignore and dismiss it. And we consume content outside of ourselves that conditions us to ignore and dismiss it. Nobody wakes up and think, oh my God, I'm motivated. I'm going to go out there and kill somebody today. And doesn't have a thought that says, oh my goodness, I know this, I'm aware this thought is wrong. Of course, everybody have that little voice in the back of their heads, no matter who they say they are. But we ignore it. We ignore this beautiful being that we are, that's trying to show up over and over and over again. So how do we access this beautiful state of consciousness, this beautiful state of pure awareness effortlessly? Intuition. By developing or by moving our mind into a state of pure awareness. And how do we do that? Well, there's an old Cree teaching that says the longest journey you will ever take is the 18 inches from your head to your heart. The longest, when you look at the Tibetan Tenka, we know it takes at least an entire lifetime, sometimes lifetimes. We've had to come back over and over again and suffer until we go, okay, enough. I'm tired of suffering, and so forth, right? 18 inches, that's all there is to it. But it is the longest, most beautiful 18 inches, and excruciating at times, that you'll ever take. Excruciating because of what's in here. Right? So the Buddha said, we need to learn to get out of our own way. And how do we access it? Through meditation. So no matter what bullshit there is out there, and I've heard this, so I'm standing up and say, no matter what bullshit you heard out there about all these different ways in which you can do this work, meditation is the only thing that equips you with what you need, so that when you sit with yourself, and you have to sit with yourself if you're going to successfully heal yourself. When you sit with yourself, eventually the mind starts to become quiet. But whilst the mind is noisy, during your meditation, pay attention to that noise. Because that noise is the content of your subconscious mind, your pain body, and your egoic state of mind. It's showing you the content that is currently consuming you. It's showing you the content that is stealing your life force energy. That's why at the end of the day, or even before the end of the day, you have no energy left. Or your mind, oh my God, I don't have time for this. You know how many people actually have time and could have showed up for this workshop today, but didn't, because they're convinced they don't have time. They're convinced that something else that they're doing is more important than spending time with themselves. You see, the successful people in this world, this is the work that they do. Thich Nhat Hanh, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Oprah Winfrey, Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle, Dr. Joe Dispenza. So many beautiful people in this world, beautiful beings. This is what we do. You meditate. You spend that time. You self-care, because self-care is self-love, no matter what bullshit anyone else tells you out there. Concentration, meditation, focus, so that you can understand your mind, your own egoic state of mind, and your subconscious mind, so that you can understand the imprints of what you're carrying. Nobody can do that for you. Yes, you can have a coach like myself, that can help you create an energetic blueprint and so forth. But at the end of the day, I'm just a guide. You are responsible for doing your inner work. You have to take action. And taking action might mean saying, you know what? I'm going to book a vacation day off work, and I'm going to come to this workshop because it is benefiting me. I am serving my higher conscious self. I am choosing to serve my divinity. I am taking action. You are in charge of that. You're in charge of that decision. And meditation is how equips you with the ability to see and understand your own mind. Meditation is how you experience that state of pure awareness. Meditation equips you with the tools of mindfulness. So because through self-reflection and introspection, right? Meditation equals mindfulness, and that equals pure awareness, or leads to pure awareness. Pure awareness means understanding because you recognize your own ego, mind, and pain body imprints so deeply that you can see it coming from a flipping mile. And when you can see it, because you understand it that well, because you have that relationship with yourself, so you're now standing in your power. When you can see it and understand it from that depth, you are standing in your power, not just the fake bullshit power that's out there. You're standing in your divine power as the divine. Nothing can penetrate you when you own your consciousness. And when you can see and understand yours, beautiful beings, you can see and understand everyone else in the world. I call this divine discernment. Because then you can make decisions for yourself in relation to what energies do you want to engage with, who do you want to engage with, who do you want to listen to, which party do you want to go to. So how the unconscious ego mind shows up in its lower unconscious states, and pain body generates thoughts and feelings that nourishes the lower form of your expression and experiences, and any entities that have attached themselves to feed on those energies. Literally, that's it in a nutshell. Sounds easy, right? Thoughts and feelings. So it shows up in your thoughts and feelings. It creates thoughts. So if you're worrying about finance and about everything, about work, job insecurity, about inflation, the economy, and everything else that you were thought to worry about, right? Or your thoughts, your thinking, and all you're doing in your thoughts is judging, this person at work, that family member, that friends, and just judge. Or anger, anxiety, restlessness, anxiety, hate, resentment. Resentment is the root cause of cancer. Resistance, fear, sadness, your victim state of mind, and feeling sorry for yourself. And this is the one we just talked about. Do you feel like you don't have enough time? These are all imprints. These are all clues, or that shows you, that they will tell you right away whether your mind is in a lower frequency, a lower vibration, meaning you're operating from the pain body and egoic state of mind, or whether you're connected to your intuitive state of mind and you're flowing from that state. Because thoughts and feelings, all these thoughts and feelings here that I just shared, equals action. Because what you think and what you feel is how you're going to show up in this world. And you think that we're fooling people and people aren't aware, but even though people aren't aware of themselves and what's going on, everybody knows somebody, when somebody shows up violently, everybody can recognize that, can't we not? Or if somebody is showing up negatively, you can recognize that, can you not? Can you recognize? The question is, can you recognize when you show up that way? Actions is how you show up in the world. And so this is why on the Eightfold Path and the Cree teaching, the first step is to develop the right mind, the right view. This is why. Because when it's wrong, because it's flowing through the pain body and the egoic state of mind, when it's these thoughts, when it's wrong, it means you have work to do. It's that simple. And that work is developing your mind. And I've heard a lot of people saying out there, oh my goodness, we're going to get rid of the egoic state. We're going to get rid of the ego. We got to kill the ego. I'm guilty of saying, oh my God, I'm going to kill the ego. And I'll tell you something. The first time I experienced a disconnection from my ego, I cried like a fucking baby. I couldn't stop crying because it felt like something was dying. I felt like I was losing. It was like worse. It was like I was losing a parent, like I was losing a friend. I was losing so much. It was the saddest feeling that I've ever experienced. Sadness beyond the depths of sadness that you can possibly imagine. Because by then, I was able to recognize that it is because of this beautiful mind, because it plays a dualistic role, I had gotten this far in my journey to the point where it was now going, I trust you. I let go. So what are some of the tools that you can use to help yourself nourish your divinity, your intuition? So instead of falling into the traps of nourishing your egoic state of mind and your pain body unconsciously without knowing, what are some of the tools that you can use to help yourself? Tools that I think they should put on TV, in the TV shows more often, through media everywhere, right? So some of those tools is you got to understand, is to understand the 7 sacred laws of the universe, right? We don't have time to go through those laws, but you can Google this. Okay, understand the 7 sacred laws of the universe and how you relate to them, how they play out in your life. One of the things I forgot to add on the list is also the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, right? Which the Eightfold Path is about having the right intention, the right view, right? The right samadhi, and so forth. Understanding the 3, 6, and 9, which is wisdom, compassion, and skillful means. Remember, Nikola Tesla said, if you knew the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, you would have a key to the universe. Beautiful beings, this is the key. The 3 represents compassion. And the 6, with compassion, you get cooperation, don't you? No matter where you go in the world or what you do, if you're vibrating compassion from that beautiful heart of yours, it can break any walls down. You don't even have to make effort if that's your vibration. Compassion leads to cooperation, right? So the wisdom of compassion, cultivating that compassion, right, leads to cooperation, which is the 6. And if you have the 6, the 3 and the 6, beautiful beings, 9 represent endings, does it not? You can bring any cyclical existence to an end. Now, understanding that formula and applying it, playing with it and applying it to your day-to-day life is a whole different story. You can have fun with it. It is beautiful and it's powerful. So before you do anything, I invite you from today onwards, before you do anything, I invite you to briefly contemplate. This is mindfulness practice, okay? Briefly contemplate, right? By becoming aware of what you're doing and how it's serving you. And you can ask yourself these questions, why do I want to do this? Whatever it is that you're going to do, X, Y, Z, how does this serve me? Is it serving my higher conscious self, or is it serving my egoic state of mind and pain, body, and print? Simple. That in itself is a mindfulness practice. And some of the tools that you could use to continue to help raise your vibration and nurture your connectivity to your intuition is the right intention. So to develop a daily energetic ritual, I call it ritual practice, is self-care. And self-care, beautiful beings, is self-love, right? Self-love. The right actions is, for example, I smudge every single day when I can. And I say when I can because sometimes my egoic state of mind makes me lazy. And rather than smudge, which I know I should do every day, at least every other day, I used to do it religiously every other day, right? It cleanses the energy, right? Our energetic state. And so much more, right? And I use, some of the medicines that you could use is for smudging or cleansing, right? Is sage, sweetgrass, cedar. This is all the indigenous medicines that I use, right? Tobacco. And then I also go to the ocean, water, or when I don't go to the ocean, when I shower with intention. Sometimes when I'm showering, I'm like, oh, mani padme home, and so forth. Have fun with it. Create your own ritual. If it helps you to feel good and you're nourishing your higher conscious self, please continue to do so. Or I go into nature. I go for walks. I go for meditation. I go for blissing out, Start journaling, journal everything. If you're going to meditate, you're going to have realizations, right? Realizations of, oh my goodness, this is my pain body. I'm carrying this. Oh my goodness, I'm carrying this vibration of worry. Journal it all. Most importantly, have a gratitude and an abundance journal. You want to get rich, you want to make money, you want to be successful in your business, start an abundance journal, a gratitude and abundance journal. Gratitude, being grateful. I'm grateful for waking up every single day. My God, I'm alive. 14 months ago, I had 3 heart attacks, okay? I had a triple bypass surgery and 5 strokes during my surgery. I'm sitting here today with you. I'm alive. I'm still teaching, my God. Gratitude is everything in the journey. You'd be amazed what gratitude can do. Start a gratitude and an abundance journal. Be grateful for what you already have. That's the key to abundance. Not for more of what you want, because I'm not going to get into this today, but there's end goals and means goals. Means goals is like, oh my God, universe, I want this money because I want to buy another car. I want to buy a car even though you already have a car. And means to an end, right? There's a reason why you want something, because more that insatiable appetite. No matter what you receive, it won't be enough. You think it would be. Be grateful for be grateful for what you already have. You have a roof over your head? Great. You're not on the street homeless, are you? You're on income assistance? Great. You be grateful. You know what? In my journal, I don't have, it's under my, it's on my table, but in there I have, when I used to be on income assistance, thank you Trudeau for the money for income assistance. Thank you income assistance for the money. Because you know what? That money feeds me. It fed my daughter. It feeds my daughter. It keeps a roof over our head. Change your abundance mindset and you will become abundant. The universe will reward you with abundance. But if you tell yourself you're poor, or you don't have enough, or you don't have money, or you don't want to pay for a workshop, or you don't want to, you don't want to invest in yourself, what you think is what you become. And that's the vibration that you're feeding. Music is another beautiful tool that you can use. And I say, be mindful what you listen to, because words is energy. Words matter. Words feed your vibratory field. So the same word over and over again, creates a frequency, right? And I use here, I said most people listen for decades, what they listen to was designed to feed the victim consciousness mentality, right? It was designed to feed your pain body vibration. Not on purpose, because music is a form of expression. And one of the examples I like to use, because I love Eminem. Yes, surprise. His music is brilliant, and I can enjoy it from a different state without it penetrating my consciousness. So for example, when I listen to, cleaning out my closet, there's a great one. When I'm doing deep inner work and I'm in there, like in the dark nights of the soul, and I'm scrubbing my house and, I'm doing that inner work, that's a great song to listen to. If you guys know Cleaning Out My Closet by Eminem. That is a pain body song. It's an expression of his pain body based on his upbringing and his relationship with his mom and so forth, right? A lot of rap music is an example of what feeds, for example, violent states of mind. Now, I know nobody will dare to say it, right? Because it's generated from being on the streets, living in the ghetto. And I used to, when I migrated to Canada, I lived in one of the ghettos in Toronto. I grew up in a country where that was, in a way normal, right? And I know how difficult it is to live in that type of environment. So a lot of the music expresses, the experiences of that environment, which is somebody's anger, their frustration, the hardship of that environment, and so forth. That's not the music I let my daughter listen to, or I teach her not to listen to. I allow her to choose, because I want her to understand, to know the difference between her, when her thought is arising from her egoic state of mind or a pain body versus higher conscious self. So I use music. Actually, music is how I teach her. And so now she could listen to any music and she will tell you if it's a pain body song or not. And she listens to music and she changes the words of the song. So if it's a pain body song, she's like, oh, don't worry, Mom, I like the rhythm of it, but I've changed the words. So music, be mindful what you listen to. If you're listening to pain body music, I'd say turn it off. Start listening to some high vibrational music like solfeggio frequencies. If you love Metallica, Nothing Else Matters played at 528 hertz. Great. There's a lot of music out there, believe it or not. Depeche Mode, Enigma, so many artists, Sarah Brightman. the Gregorian chant. So many beautiful artists sing and create music from that higher frequency, those higher states of consciousness. The vibration is a lot higher than one that keeps you sad, like those sappy love songs, oh my God, that attunes you to pain, body love in a relationship that's vibrating in the lower frequencies. Sound matters, because sounds are a collection of frequency which creates a vibration, certain vibration inside of your mind and your body. So when you listen to something, pay attention to how it makes you feel. Very, very important. The same rule that applies to sound should be applied to what you read, what you watch on TV, and what you engage in through any form of entertainment. That's simple. Mindfulness, right? Being mindful, being aware. And the same rules apply to food. And I'm screwing up. I'm not going to lie. I'm fucking up when it comes to food right now in this regard. Since my heart attacks and surgery, I've been finding foods that's easier to make and easier to eat, and mostly easier to make and prepare, because I didn't have the same amount of energy that I used to have before, because my body is still healing. But when it comes to food, what you eat, how you eat it, and where you eat actually matters. So if you plan to buy food that's already cooked, for example, at the very least, have a mindfulness practice. Be mindful of where you're purchasing that food from, because whoever is preparing that food, their energetic vibration is going into that preparation of that food now, isn't it? And if you're uncertain about where you're buying it from, then create a ritual of some sort. Pray before you eat or drink anything. I pray at Starbucks when I go for Starbucks. And one other things that I enjoy using, and actually I burned today, is incense and essential oils. They help to, through your sense of smell, increase your vibration as well. And I gave just a few examples of frankincense and myrrh. I burn that in my home all the time. And it's very cheap. You could buy it from Banyan Books. I think it's like $2.99 for a packet. I have, essential oils like bergamot, tea tree, lavender, dragon's blood, which is, used for protection and so forth. Additional tools that you can use to nourish your higher conscious self, your intuition, your connection, you as a divine, meditation, which moves you into a state of pure awareness. It's a number one tool, just for you to be able to see with great clarity when you are feeding the various energetic states of your vibration. And awareness, when I say awareness, it means being aware, fully conscious of your states of consciousness. And that's a practice of self-mastery. It takes a few years to really become that state of pure awareness. It takes many years. Another beautiful form of expression and nourishing your divinity is dance. If you love to dance like I do, I create what I call, an energetic dance, which basically involves the movement of the spine and various formation, the spine and the hands. There's various formations or mudras, for lack of a better word, right? Many traditions have various forms of expression in regards to dance, right? Enjoy them, explore them, from Qigong to Tai Chi, Kundalini dance, tribal dancing, African women, they actually participate actually in tribal dance when it comes to the raising of the Kundalini energy, right? Tantric, Indian dance, and I say Nagin, which means snake, which is actually the Kundalini energy, dance and so forth. There's so many forms of dance that you can enjoy, explore, play. When you dance, be mindful what you dance to, the songs that you're dancing to, that's all. What are the words of those songs? How does the frequency, how does the sound of those songs make you feel? That's how you're going to be able to tell whether it's a low frequency sound and it doesn't feel good in your body versus a high frequency sound. The key to dancing is to surrender and allow your body to tap into the vibratory field or the quantum field of what you want to create or present. So I dance everything into existence. When I'm doing a ritual, I'm dancing. When I'm opening up a portal, like in November last year, I opened up the child sexual abuse portal. I danced. A few days ago, I was doing the Shiva dance because it was Mahashivaratri. Allow your body to tap into the vibration because your body wants to move a certain way, but it's your mind that's holding you back. Your mind that's thinking, oh, this doesn't look good. Oh, it feels awkward. Oh my goodness, somebody is looking at me. You feel shame. You feel uncomfortable. Those are all pain body imprints. So dancing is a great way to experience and to see your pain body imprints. Write them down and then sit with them in meditation. Towards the end, we're going to do a little exercise of how we're going to dissolve a pain body. And you can use that exercise for, whatever it is that you're writing down that you're feeling, guilt, shame, discomfort. I was in my apartment when I started in my apartment by myself, and I'd be looking around like to see if anybody is watching me, and there's no fucking person in here. Just me. And sometimes my daughter, she would come out and dance with me, and she would do the same energetic dance, the same movements, and we would have a flipping blast. Have fun with it. Inner work can be fun if you learn to get out of your own way. So allow your body to express itself the way it wants to express itself. Alternatively, you can also, so if you're lost and you really don't know how, and it's really that awkward, you can also tap into another teacher's state of consciousness. So for example, if you resonate with the Shiva, and your background, or your lineage, that's what you tie into, like the Shiva, Hinduism. You can, or Kali, or any one of the deities, you can imagine yourself as them, or you can imagine them and then mimic those movements until you're able to become them. Ask and you shall receive. Or you can tap into, like when I learned movements, it was Thich Nhat Hanh that helped me, right? I would tap in. And then Ram Dass, when he was passing away, surprised me because he showed up here. So teachers do show up. It's your intention that determines which teacher shows up, whether they show up, whether the deities show up or they don't. And as long as your intention, remember I said, if you're manifesting your life's purpose, or if you're wanting to know what that is, as long as it's tied to a noble cause, to something that's designed that will serve all of humanity, they will show up. All of your universe, when you are flowing from the heart, all of universe orchestrates everything in its power to meet you, no matter where you're at, no matter which state of consciousness you're in. as long as you're moving in the right direction. For example, for years, I channeled Sitting Bull because I was living in an indigenous homeless shelter. And I was awakening, my consciousness was awakening. And so when I channeled him, I allowed him to bring the medicine people. So all of my ancestors, I would allow him to invite them. I didn't allow my egoic state of mind to get in the way and think, oh my goodness, yeah, I'm going to be that and I'm this and I'm, no, that's bullshit. So when I did certain ceremonies, like during Standing Rock, and neutralizing the states of consciousness of other beings, the specific outcomes and so forth, I respect the teachers before me, and I allow them to teach me what I needed to learn in order to do the work here on the ground with them. So keep allowing until you feel comfortable. I say when it comes to dance, keep allowing until you feel comfortable in public moving that way. That's when you know you've broken through that limiting belief, that subconscious mind that's making you, that's making you care about what other people think. It's that easy. When I was creating Brothers in Arms, this beautiful being, his name is Kieran Sweeney. He is the founder of a beautiful school here in Vancouver. And when he heard about my cause, that I wanted to teach men for free, he said, Francesca, I'm going to invite you to take these courses at my school for free. You don't have to pay for it. And in the third day of the business development course, he said, okay, I want every single one of you, the last day you're going to dress up and you're going to express yourself. So this is in the speaker training course, teaching us to use our voice and to showing up and speak, share with the world. What is it that we're doing? What is it that we wanted to do? And each of you are going to pick whether you're going to do a performance or whatever it is that you want to do, or a talk about what you want to share with the world. Well, my company is called Brothers in Arms. And the name Brothers in Arms is called Brothers in Arms Building Better Lives. The name Brothers in Arms, if you know Dire Straits, the song Brothers in Arms, that's where it came from. I love Dire Straits. So you know what I did on the third day? And they recorded it. And I crucified it the way they crucified Jesus, because I cannot sing. I sound awful, but you know what? Air guitar and everything. I sang Brothers in freaking Arms in front of everybody. And you know how I practice? Every day I would walk down to the waterfront at the seawall, but I would sit with my sunglasses because I didn't want anybody to see me. I was convinced the sunglasses would block me. And I would sit there and I would sing loud to the ocean, or just start singing loud, Brothers in Arms. That's how I would practice every day, to get out of my own comfort, to get comfortable, to get, to my comfort zone. So I would sing loudly in public with my sunglasses on, of course, until I was brave enough to take the sunglasses off. So have fun. Inner work doesn't have to be excruciating the way we were taught it should be. And I wrote a little blurb here about plant medicine. And what I'm going to say about that is, I'm not against plant medicine, even though some of my Facebook posts may seem that way. What I'm against is people who aren't trained to administer it, people who haven't done their inner work, that is giving it to other people and is causing damage, more harm than good. What I'm against is the fact that it can also become a dependency. So all I'm going to say about that as a coping tool is, if you're going to use plant medicine to assist you in your journey, I don't personally recommend it. Choose your shaman wisely. Make sure you go with somebody that's reputable. And know what you're engaging with. Understand yourself enough to know if this is becoming a coping tool that you're becoming dependent on. Make sure you're equipped to heal that dependency, to deal with the root cause that's causing it in the first place, that's causing that craving to happen in the first place. That's all I'm going to say about plant medicine. So how do we dissolve the ego and the pain body? Or in other words, how do we become presence? So I wrote here briefly, if I would like to invite everybody at this point, if you could turn your phones off. So here is that, pet peeve that I have, So I'm going to invite you to turn your phones off into silence. And I'm going to invite you to take a breath and close your eyes. And I'd like you to think about something that triggers you, whether it's anger, whether you're feeling sadness, whether right now you're feeling erupted. Whatever it is, if you're having a trigger, I'd like you to think about that trigger. And I'd like to invite you to feel that trigger. Now, I'd like to invite you to move your mind away from the external source of that trigger. So whatever it is that's causing you that anger, or whatever form of suffering that you're experiencing, move your thought away from the external, and I want you to bring your attention to what and acknowledge how you're feeling. I want you to sit with that feeling, to breathe into that feeling, into that anger, or whatever it is that you're feeling. Become aware of how you're feeling, how it's feeling in your cells, how it's feeling in your body. Not the content of what's causing this feeling. Let go of that. Let go of who is causing this feeling, whether it's a partner or an ex or whatever the case may be. Perhaps you're working with resentment, anger, doesn't matter what it is. Let go of who, the identity of who's causing this, and the story that the egoic state of mind is generating. Go through that feeling, allow yourself to feel it. Remember, the way out is through. So if it makes you feel like squirming when you're in that feeling, squirm if you have to. This is where I say bring movement in, start moving. Move your body. Because what you're doing by becoming one with this is you're bringing the light of awareness into it. You're becoming present with how you are feeling, not the story that's being generated by how you're feeling. Don't get caught in the stories, because the stories is what creates a victim mindset, and it's feeding that victim mindset if you're feeling pulled into the story, or if you're feeling, like you're blaming somebody for generating that feeling or for causing that feeling, or you're feeling sorry for yourself. Let go of that. Keep bringing your mind back to how you're feeling instead. Concentrate on what you feel. And breathe. Don't forget to breathe. And as you're breathing inside of this feeling, be intensely alert so that you're staying rooted in this feeling. Because it's normal at this point, if you're feeling tempted to turn away, to log off, not to do this. You're probably feeling exhausted, sleepy, a gazillion thoughts are going through your mind. You're getting distracted. Somebody is trying to call you. External distraction is very common when you're present. when you're trying to become present with yourself at this depth. Absorb the desires that are showing up and the distractions, but stay with how you're feeling. So if it's anger, stay with that anger. Observe it, but don't act on it. If you're going to work on deeper traumatic imprints, you need to bring the light of understanding during your observation to your feeling. Meaning, you will need to go deeper. You need to understand why. Why did I attract? Why did this happen to me in the first place? And you need to go deeper. Today, we're not going to do deeper traumatic imprints. Stay alert. Stay with the feeling of anger or sadness or dread or what, frustration, uncertainty, whatever it is that you're feeling. Feel it with your entire being, every cell in your being. Because by feeling it, what you're bringing is the light of consciousness, is what you're bringing to it. Eckhart Tolle calls it your flame of consciousness. I like that. Feeling that feeling, becoming present with it, becoming one with it is surrender, because this is where surrender happens. As you breathe, the more you feel it, the more you're surrendering to it. And you're giving it attention. Attention is acceptance, and acceptance is surrender. Surrender is presence, becoming one with it. That's how you dissolve a pain body. You may need to practice this a few times to get the gist of it, right? It is a conscious death, is what we call that. Because what happens in this conscious death, the ego dies. The ego is the story maker, the one that's telling you that it's somebody else's fault. Or the one that's trying to distract you because now you've caught it. So it's causing the phone to ring or something to come up at work, something, anything, and it will do anything. You know, in Buddhism, they say the ego will fight you to the death. That's what that means. Well, there's deeper meaning to it too, because fight you to the death, as it would go as far as, you know, making you suicidal, making people suicidal and so forth, right? Causing them to commit suicide. You know, whenever I'm dissolving a big subconscious pain body, I get sleepy and exhausted, and suddenly I have to go into deep sleep after I'm done. So there's, you know, the key is to stay with it, stay alert, be intensely alert, and stay with that feeling, not with the stories. And the moment you stop feeding the stories that's creating that feeling, the ego dies. That pain body dissolves. And I shouldn't say the ego dies. I should use a better word. The ego evolves, because through understanding, when you're working with deep traumatic imprints, for example, understanding equips you with the ability to evolve the ego from its lower state into a higher state of thinking. So take a few breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Allow your body to relax and open your eyes when you're done. You're welcome to practice this a few times, and believe me, you will get the hang of it. You will understand how powerful becoming present with how you feel and what you feel, how powerful this practice is. So before I get into my end goals, because this is where I talk a little bit about why I'm doing what I'm doing a bit more and how I'm doing it. And basically a lot of, an overview of the course that I teach, and a lot of it we actually went through today in this presentation, a little, pieces of the heart of it, so tools you can use to help yourself exit the cycles of suffering and so forth. I'm going to leave you today with this beautiful teachings I learned from my Zen Sunday morning sit. And it's Zen Hollow Bones, Awaken One's Vow. So being equanimous. If by chance they should turn against us, abuse us, prosecute us, because that's what happened to the Christ. That's what happened to Gandhi and many other beings that are doing this work, right? We will remember our fearless hearts, our path of wisdom, compassion, and I added nonviolence there, and skillful means. I added nonviolence because violence is an issue in our world right now. And before we react, we must consider deeply our personal and collective karma that brought these conditions and circumstances upon us. Then with each arising moment of normal feelings and thoughts, we will simultaneously recognize within us a field of pure awareness, wisdom, compassion, skillful means. I'm going to explain this a little bit better on the other side, because I will end by sharing with you how the Christ and many other divine beings choose wisdom, compassion, and skillful means. So from their state of pure awareness, remember when the Christ was being nailed to the cross, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they've done. Who says that? Who have so much power that they can start a storm? They can literally end the world if they wanted to. I mean, he enough power to heal somebody of their sickness. Enough power to stop what was happening to him by creating a disaster and just annihilating everybody, because he had that much power. Instead, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they've done. He had wisdom, compassion, and skillful means, and this is how he used it. Wisdom, he has the wisdom to recognize that what Gandhi said and what Martin Luther King says, violence begets violence. So rather than feeding that energy that was being sent towards him, right? They were being violent towards him. He recognized the ignorance of our ego mind. He recognized that when you're in this lower frequency, this lower states of ego mind and pain body, that this is how you show up. They're ignorant. They don't know better. They cannot see the real truth. They cannot even understand what the depth of what they're doing, the karmic imprint, what this is creating. So he recognized the ignorance of ego mind, and he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And wisdom, so wisdom, and then there's the compassion is begging for forgiveness rather than destroying everybody. And the skillful means is recognizing that which got us here in the first place. Because if he chose violence to defend himself or to do something that most people would do, then he is now feeding that cycle of suffering. Like Gandhi said, becoming an assimilation of them, because he's now doing what they're doing, and that's violence. Any form of killing or destroying of anything is violence, right? So instead, he allowed his body to be crucified. That's the whole idea of the story. He allowed his crucifixion, and as a result of that, his state of consciousness is now accessible to every human being on the planet. You all have the ability to experience the Christ. Because of his sacrifice, he became the Son. And we can all access him. Many, many beautiful beings access him. Eckhart Tolle, he is in his state of Christ consciousness. Many beings, the Gandhi, Martin Luther King, they all have applied that wisdom, compassion, and skillful means. So not doing the same thing that we've done for centuries, such as trying to stop violence with violence. And like Buckminster Fuller said, doing the same thing over and over and again and expecting different results is stupidity. So if you want to break a cyclic existence within your lineage, your family, then you wake up your consciousness and you meditate by meditating every day, contemplating, understanding your egoic state of mind and pain body imprints, and evolving them, dissolving whatever pain bodies you need to dissolve. And believe me, you do those steps every day, your vibration will change. You'd be amazing. You become the extraordinary. And so that's what I want to leave you guys with today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to open up the floor for questions.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like our feeling equals how we show up in the world.
Sorry, do you mind speaking up louder? You sound a little far away.
I like what you said. Our feeling equals how we show up in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you. So Sophie and Hash, do you have any questions? I know, Sophie, you've been through this a few times, so. Yes, thank you very much, Sophie, for dropping in. Have a beautiful rest of your day. I'm actually going to wrap up as well because I think we went a little bit over time, a lot over time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. Have a blessed rest of your day. It doesn't look like anybody have any questions, probably because there's a lot to sit with. So thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Namaste. The light in me bows to the light in you.